Hello, and welcome to the Mindful Evolution Podcast. I'm Leah Drew, your host and mind-body healing guide. This podcast is for the awareness seeker ready to go deeper, create change, and feel more empowered over their physical, mental, and emotional well-being. My intention is to be a catalyst for you as we explore topics surrounding holistic health, mindset optimization, trauma healing, emotional intelligence, and much more. I'm so grateful to have you here and to support you as we evolve in mind, body, and spirit. Let's breathe in and out. Now, let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back to the Mindful Evolution Podcast. I am your host, Leah Drew, and today I have the lovely Nathan Riley with me in our episode today. Nathan is an OBGYN. He is the creator of the Born Free method. We'll get into that a little bit later. And Nathan's focus is really on women's health. He is here to help women reclaim their voice, their sovereignty, and help them really get clear on what it is that they are capable of doing for themselves and for their babies throughout their pregnancy. I love where Nathan and I connect on women's empowerment, where we connect on pleasure, where we connect on really like bringing this concept of spirituality in through all of this for women as women reclaim their voice, as they step into their power, as they really honor their bodies in the temples of creation that we as women get to walk through the world with every day. So Nathan, I'm really excited to have you here and to dive in today. So thank you for being present with us.
Unmute. Of course I'm unmute. It's my pleasure, Leah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And I know you and I were dropping into a little bit of conversation at the beginning of our little show today. And I know that there's a lot alive in you today that really relates to the conversations that we've been having, the conversation that we intend to have today. And I'd love to give you a little bit of space to just like share what's alive in your body, what's alive in your mind, what's alive in your heart, and what are you moving through today?
Yeah. When we ask people, hey, how are you doing? You asked me that, and I told you honestly, I'm not doing very good. Not doing very well. The past 24 hours have been kind of just waterworks for me. And I'm fortunate enough to have a partner with whom I'm very deeply connected and intertwined to be able to support me. A woman, my high school sweetheart, who's really found her voice and knows who she is and knows how to support a man when and actually invites a man to be vulnerable. But what happened was of somebody very close to me that I've known for nearly my whole life got very, very bad news on their formal anatomy ultrasound. And there was innumerable anomalies found. And I don't even have a name for the diagnosis yet, but it's not likely compatible with life. And so at the 20-week and 1-day mark, she has to, with her partner, they have to make a decision around what to do. And of course, my little girls are anticipating this baby, and this partnership has gone through some tremendous, leaps and bounds in order to get here. And this is the ultimate bad news to receive in pregnancy, where you're actually faced with a really challenging decision-making process around terminating and focusing on just, perhaps the long-term morbidity or disability that this child would have if this child even survives pregnancy and childbirth. It's just a lot for anybody to hold. And I'm very, very close to this person. So yesterday was a bit of a whirlwind of figuring out how to talk about this. And what's very interesting is I'm working on a free program that I'm bringing to the world that's all around pregnancy loss. And this is one of the topics that's covered. So it's almost as if I made this program unconsciously for this person that I love so dearly. And frankly, you know, being an OBGYN and having a lot of experience with high risk scenarios and really hard decisions, because my other board specialty is in end of life care, that brings me these two worlds together sometimes. And you just never really prepare as the quote specialist to be able to have to hold this space and ride these waves with somebody who is so near and dear to you. So this is a big part of what I do. And, you know, if you only go to Instagram and see what people post, you know, you're going to get the sense that everybody should get pregnant easily and everything's going to go just fine. And hey, hands off, you know, there's no reason to have ultrasounds. There's no reason to have testing. There's no reason to do any of this stuff. The system's just out there to make money. And while that might be largely true, I think in many cases we can argue that there are important reasons for which I had recommended to this person that, hey, why don't we just get the level 2 ultrasound and just see what's going on? Like, just get an idea. You don't have to find out the sex. You don't have to do any of that. Because the alternative would be, we don't do this scan and that 1 in a million thing happens and you're left with a very, very challenging life for the rest of your life and this child's life, whatever this may be and whatever may unfold. And so fortunately, she got the ultrasound and now we have to take this journey. And I'm very grateful that this person has her voice and is connected to something greater than herself and realizes that just that positive pregnancy test is not a guarantee that you're going to have a living, breathing baby in your arms. And this is really, I think, the crux of our conversation today is this is not just a mechanical process. If it were, we could take you apart like a car and put you back together and you would drive, you know, for another 5,000 miles. It doesn't work quite like that. There's something more here that's immeasurable. And fortunately for this person, she has people like me and my wife and a lot of other people in our community to support her. But I don't know if everybody has that type of support. In fact, you might go to the OB and you get this bad news and you're left there kind of bereft and sitting there isolated in your home wondering, what am I going to do? So that's what's fresh for me right now.
Thank you for sharing and for opening your heart and being vulnerable here with us and with me, with the listener. And I think you make a really important statement here and point here, is that the majority of people don't have the community support around them to hold them through such challenging experiences. And, you know, I know that this person that you are so close to in your life, that this is one of many women that experience this challenge, this heartbreak, this loss. And how beautiful that you're in the process of releasing this pregnancy loss program. Because in general, I think death and loss is an area of life that we don't focus in enough on. It's an area that I think we're raised as children, as adults, and we're raised in life and celebration, and we celebrate the birthdays where we're getting older.
Right.
And we're not taught about death. We're not taught about sadness and loss and how to move through this mourning process.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually having this conversation yesterday about the fact that, you know, as facilitators and as space holders and as practitioners and as healers, that which you and I both are, it's like when you make the choice to fully say yes and step into the experience that you are here to deliver, right? It's that moment that you bring yourself into greater levels of alignment with your path, with your highest self, with your true mission and your purpose in this life. The universe is like, okay, well, now let's initiate you. And I'm curious, like, because there's two perspectives, not perspectives, but points of view here, right? There's the woman who's actually experiencing this herself. And then there's all of the individuals around her, the people that love her, that are also experiencing this loss and this pain as well. And what are important things for you, I'm sure this is going to be a beautiful reminder for yourself as well as for the listener, but what are important things to remember for both people, for both parties as you're moving through this process?
Yeah. What I think is most relevant for me right now, and I think that the answer that I give might be different for every single person. I wrote a book chapter actually as a perinatal palliative care specialist on when this type of thing arises. It's just so interesting how my life has led me now to sort of to flex my my chops, so to speak, because this is at my doorstep now. But that book chapter was really focused on something called trisomy 18. And trisomy 18 is a condition that is largely incompatible with life, certainly incompatible with a normal life, especially if, let's say, there's not a full brain developed, or, massive heart issue and there's no brain, right? And the hands and feet are deformed. Like this is a child that has a chromosomal issue, has multiple defects, including a brain that's never going to fully develop a cortex, right? If at all. And when this situation arises, we have a couple of decisions, right? Most people would say you do everything in your power, but what does everything in our power actually get us? So the starting point of the conversation is what's important to you. And so for anybody who's listening right now, like your story, your values actually matter. The problem with the way that most of us take care of one another is that we're really not interested in the full story and who you are and what your beliefs are and what your preferences are. And that goes not just for like mainstream medicine. This is everybody. Like, when's the last time you just sat and listened to somebody's story for a couple hours? I mean, that's a big part of my job. And when I was still in palliative care in the hospital system, that was all that I did. It's not my job to tell you what to do. It might be my job to, have you considered this? Or, giving recommendations. But ultimately, we need to know who you are and elicit everything that's important to you before we can start rallying the resources around you. So what I think is most missed in these types of scenarios, whether it's a recurrent miscarriage story or it's an elective abortion. My wife and I had an abortion when we were younger. She had an IUD in place, and now there's an embryo, and it's implanted low in the uterus near the cervix. It wasn't in the cervix, so it wasn't like a cervical like it's there. And we decided to remove the IUD. This is before I was an OBGYN, so I might have had some other ideas or whatever then, but we were young. I had just finished med school, and we removed the IUD and in the process terminated the pregnancy. Well, we never really processed that. In the aftermath, the aftershock of that led me to eventually having a very sort of trauma releasing experience of something I was holding in when I went into ceremony and called in my ancestors, sitting with some indigenous midwives in South Africa. I didn't expect, I thought like great-great-great-great-grandpa would come through, but it was actually this baby that we had terminated. And I only know that because intuitively I just felt that's who it was. Who, I don't even know what that means, but I felt the essence of the spirit of this person course through me, and every hair on my body stood up. It was wild, and it was just waterworks, and I wasn't even crying. It was just water coming out of me, my nose, my mouth, my eyes, maybe my ears, I don't know. And so when we're then faced with later issues, whether the baby dies and you have a stillbirth, or maybe the baby dies shortly after, or you have to decide around this 20-week ultrasound, what are we going to do about these findings? And what I think people fail to realize is that when a person loses a baby, even if it's that little, blighted ovum, just a chemical pregnancy, oh, you'll get pregnant again. First off, don't ever say that to somebody. That's not the right thing to say, because this could be catastrophic to them. This is not as easily just brushed aside. Because what a family unit is mourning with the loss of a child is not the child. Yes, that's a part of it. That's the starting point. That's the buy-in at the poker table. What we're actually facing as a society is a bunch of people who are mourning the loss of the dream. It's this thing that they were dreaming up all of this time, maybe 20 weeks into a pregnancy, or maybe 9 months, and then the baby passes and you have to give birth to a dead baby. What they're mourning is, of course, this child. But more importantly, they're mourning this dream that will never become realized. which was holding this little child that they had already named. They already had a nursery decorated. They already had clothes being given to them. They already had their baby shower. And now all of this stuff is just going to sit in a room, maybe for a couple years longer. And so it's this dream that we have to become detached from, that is an acknowledgement of that fracture is the only way that we can help families reconcile when these hard things come to be. But in our world, we're very isolated. We're not expected to be able to share our feelings, our emotions, our thoughts, our joy, because now we're worried that like, oh, I had this joyful birth, especially for women who are not really incentivized ever to speak about how joyful they are. In fact, women tend to connect to one another through misery. And this is a cultural thing. This is in Disney movies. Like, you're not supposed to be joyful. You're not supposed to seek out pleasure. And especially if there's another person who had a bad thing happen, we should never celebrate anything. And the problem there, of course, that's like a healthy thing to bear in mind. But the problem here is that actually doesn't really address the underlying issue, which is this sense that this thing happened to you and it's your baggage to carry for the rest. We don't want to hear about it. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to actually get into those vulnerable spaces because that's too hard. It's hard for us to sit with another person's pain. So I recommend people really, really, try to acknowledge that this person is not hurting just for the loss of their baby, but this family is hurting. And the ripple effect means that their extended family and their community at large is going to be grieving this dream that will never be realized.
Yeah, and I think that's really hard, like letting go of this thing that you've had such depth of connection to.
Yeah.
And it's this, in my experience, I mean, I have never lost a child myself. I have never birthed a child myself. But I have been around many women that have. Actually, over the last week, there's been 2 women in my life that have told me that they have aborted children. And it's, you bring up this important point, I think, about being able to be with the emotions, being able to be with the trauma, being able to be with the story, right? And you were saying earlier how one of your main jobs is to just listen to the stories that women have to share. And there's something beautiful that's happening in that, where women are being seen, they're being heard, they're being supported, and you're giving them a voice. Because in the medical system, most women don't get the chance to have their voice and to speak their voice. They're told what to do. And that takes away that power. That takes away that creative life force, that deep intuitive sense that women have. It takes away their pleasure to honor themselves and what their body is saying to them and what their body needs. And you also brought this back to ceremony, and how in your ceremony, this experience came through for you where you were processing this loss of this child that would have been, that is no longer, right? But the spirit is there. The spirit, the energy, it lives on. And I think that's something that so many women just shove down and they don't talk about and they don't navigate and they don't deal with for probably many fears, for many reasons. They may not have the support. They may be afraid that they won't be accepted. They might be judged. It might just feel too fucking painful for them to be with. And that is exactly the reason why we need to be with it. Because when we don't allow ourselves to be with the pain and the stories and the experiences, and we just brush all of the shit under the rug and we don't talk about it and we don't allow ourselves to be supported with it, it influences everything moving forward. It influences our bodies. It influences how we can function, how our organs can function as women. It influences, and yes, we're speaking about women in pregnancy here, but for any men that are listening, like, this applies to you as well.
Yeah.
It influences everything.
Let me speak to the men just for a second, if I can, Leah.
Please, absolutely.
what we're going to be talking about with women, and I'm so happy that our conversation is going to steer that direction, because I don't want necessarily for people to assume that this is the end of the road. You have this terrible thing happen and life is over, because the grieving process for, let's just focus on a woman for a moment. That grieving process is required. A healthy grieving process is required for you to experience exaltation in the future, right? And it's not necessarily, it'll be healed when you have your next child. This is going to be something that is on your heart for the rest of your life. You never heal completely from these bad things. And that's important because it becomes a part of your story. It's an unwritable, unerasable part of your story. It just is. And in this fertility journey alone, there is an utter lack of support for men to be as vulnerable as they may need to be for this pregnancy to actually come to fruition. It's not just that the relationship starts to become mechanical and we have to time sex around, when, our fertile window or whatever. Like, yeah, that's a big part of what I do. But more importantly, I was just talking to a man who works with, his name's Ted Ryder. He works with John Wineland, who has a great book called From the Core, which I think every man should read. It's a part of my men's group as well that I host. And he was sharing with me, he said, I'm really compelled by what you're doing here with this men's work, but the men's work is specifically for dads or soon to be dads, or maybe dads who want to be dads, but are never going to be dads biologically, right? And Ted is one of those individuals. And he had shared that going in and out of fertility clinics after miscarriage, he realized like he had never once really expressed how hard this was to anybody. And so he was in one of the fertility clinics and he saw on the wall like a little piece of paper printed out like, hey, men's support group for fertility challenges. And he was like, that changed my entire life. Just having other men that are willing to hear how hard this is. And they say, yeah, this is really hard for me too. So this conversation that we're about to get into with women is also consequentially impacting how men show up, because we're expected to be the knight in shining armor that comes and fixes everything. But what is there to fix about a baby that has a multiple anomalies that can't be saved? Like, what's there to fix? So if you man, Mr. Man listening, if this is the only way you've been incentivized to provide value to the world, to your relationship, to yourself, is by fixing problems, you're going to feel completely overwhelmed by this type of ordeal. And when we compound that with this notion that men are supposed to be stoic, you read my books, the Book of Five Rings, and you have this sort of terse kind of rock hard exterior, that turns your spine a little jelly-like, right? You should have a strong spine and a soft belly, but most men are told, just don't let anybody in and don't let anybody see you. And so as a consequence, men can't even experience real joy because they're never able to fully express sadness or to fully grieve the way that any human being needs to grieve. So they're a reflection of one another. Men and women are just playing this volleyball match with no rules, and we wonder why our society is so bereft of true intimacy and connection.
I'm like tearing up over here, because like for me at the core of my work, I do what I do because I see that lack of intimacy and I see that lack of connection in society, and it makes me sad. It hurts my heart, because I've been there. I know what it's like to not have that connection and intimacy, and I know how much that destroys not just your physical body, but your mental body, your emotional body, your energetic body, and then influences the life around you immensely. And we live in this society where people, they're afraid to ask for help, right? They're afraid to speak their emotions and their feelings. They're afraid to allow themselves to be seen, to be open, to feel. You talked about
be angry.
Exactly. You talked about this concept with men, which not just men, like everyone has. It's like the need to fix something, to do, to keep going, right? To check the things off the list, to be fucking strong. And it's like, we can't always be strong, Yeah. And because of it, we as humans put this armor up, the shields up, And it prevents us from not only being able to, first of all, it puts us in this fight or flight state, right? This place where we're ready for battle all the time. And it prevents us from not only keeping things out, but, let me rephrase that. It prevents things not only from coming in, but it also prevents things from moving out. And so when we talk about the things moving out, we're talking about the feelings, we're talking about the emotions, we're talking about the experiences, right? When we're talking about things coming in, we're talking about the connection, we're talking about the community, we're talking about the support. And part of what I do in my work is like, I help people soften, and I help them see the armor and the shields. I help them take them down so that they can fucking feel and they can allow themselves to process, because if we don't like move through the experiences that we've had in the past that are preventing us in this conversation, let's say preventing us from being fertile, preventing us from being able to carry a healthy child, we can then not create the life moving forwards that we deeply desire, that brings us pleasure. And it's all because we're literally avoiding the pain.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting to get emotional in this one today.
Well, this is really at the crux of everything that we hold near and dear. Even people who are, whether it's a person who's got an extra 150 pounds, or it's a person who has of body fat, or 150 pounds extra of muscle, and they're walking around like these brick walls. Those are two people that actually have the same insecurities, and they're armoring themselves with an identity that makes it that physically manifests as body armor. And that's not to say everybody should be skinny. I mean, what I'm saying here is that the biggest, strongest, muscly guy and the most overweight guy have the same issue with allowing things in order to allow things out. And this obviously wreaks havoc on our health, not just our physical health, right? I mean, I have a lot of friends who are overweight and healthier than the young, skinny CrossFitters, right? So this isn't really about what we've been told is a healthy body image. This is really a matter of how are you intentionally living and putting attention to things that are permitting you to really fully express yourself in the way that you've been wanting to express yourself. Even our education system doesn't really reward that. The Latin education system was about instructing you to do things in this way, whereas the Greek education system, which gave way to the Romans, was a matter of drawing it out of people, like being curious about people, being curious about the world. And that's just not the society we live in. So this is every bit as important as the 6 hacks to get healthier eggs that people are talking about on Instagram. Like, guys, that's elementary level. Like, I'm not
number
even...
one, be with your fucking emotions, like feel your shit.
Yeah. How about get a best friend? I mean, how many people have best friends out there? Holy shit.
And we're talking about like a best friend being somebody that like you can go to, that you can consciously collapse in the arms of, that you, no matter if you're a man, you're a woman, that you can just fucking cry, that you can just let yourself be seen. Oh my God, I was talking to my dad yesterday. There's just, interestingly, there's this energy right now around, I'm experiencing in life, and many around me, it sounds like you as well. There's a sadness like coming from these like deep fucking feminine wounds that have been present for so long. I'm happy to share more of my own experience with that. The last couple of weeks I sat in ceremony with my mom, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever experienced in my life. Working with medicine, because it brought up all of this generational trauma, all of these wounds that the feminine has never allowed themselves to feel. Right. And I know that you can resonate being on this path as well, as like, I have the tools, I have the wisdom, I have the knowledge, I have the ability to do what my ancestors couldn't, to process, I want to say heal my DNA, but like really like take out these parts of my DNA that are just not supporting me, right? Your body keeps a score on everything. And so all of the trauma that you've experienced in your life, that your ancestors have experienced in their lives in the past, and if we're talking about past lives that aren't your ancestors, but are some other time and place that your soul and your spirit has lived, like your body remembers all of that. And, you know, even in the ceremony, there is a woman sitting in ceremony who is somebody that I know that who's also going through her own loss journey right now with pregnancy. And, you know, just this experience that I'm like, that's coming up around in the world around me of this, of loss, of like mourning this thing that is no longer. And my grandfather passed away yesterday. God rest his soul. And my dad, like, he's apologizing to me on the phone, and he's just like, I'm sorry. I'm just like, I'm not myself. And he's like crying, and I'm like, Dad, like, this is you. Like, it's okay. You don't have to apologize. Like all of you is welcome here. Like, allow yourself to be with the feelings, the emotions. And one of the things he said to me, I think I just gotta go work this week. And he said, not because I want to get my mind off some things, but because I need to be with my best friend. And it's the man that he works with every day. And he said to me, he's like, I don't have anyone that's like him in my life. Like, and I really need him right now. And it was just beautiful to hear from him as he's like apologizing for feeling his emotions and being like, there's this man that I need to go be with and spend my day with so that I can be seen in my emotions per se. And so I think you make a really beautiful point here around like, you know, just getting a fucking best friend, but like not just getting one, like finding one, attracting one, like finding alignment with this person that can hold you, support you, lift you higher, not play in the misery that you talked about earlier that women are so commonly like attracted to, right? Like the judgment and the jealousy and the drama and the hatred, like that doesn't fucking lift us higher as human beings. That doesn't support us. That doesn't allow us to resonate higher. That doesn't allow us to create a space for a beautiful baby in our bodies. That doesn't allow us to create the life that brings us pleasure, that allows us that deeper levels of intimacy and connection. And so, yeah, like, you know, as much as you joke around about it, like the 6 or 7 things that are going to enhance, like bring you more eggs or enhance your egg health or your fertility. It's like yeah, guys, like you need to go within, like you need to be within yourself, be with your feelings and your emotions and your past experiences and like give yourself space to be with them.
Yeah.
Right? Not do, like you don't need to fucking do more.
Yeah, maybe what you need on your fertility journey or in your relationship is actually to be doing less. This productivity thing is starting to cripple our and the way that we connect to one another. For me, you know, when you have children, time is really no longer valuable. It has no bearing on what your relationship is to your children or your wife. It's your new currency is, you know, I don't know where I got this, but I've realized that spending an hour with my 4-year-old is not the same as spending 5 present moments with my 4-year-old. And she knows. And when she sees that I'm on my phone or doing something, she just goes off and finds something else. Like, well, Dad's too busy right now. And she's not like heard about it right now. But in the future, this is something my wife and I, it's like our new mantra. Like, it doesn't actually matter what you're doing right now. You're actually giving them an impression of who you are and how you love them and care about them and you know, what your parenting style is. If you're an angry person, if you're a kind person, if you're looking to cover, that's all going to imprint on them, and they're going to carry that forward for the rest of their lives. So, this presence piece is actually everything. It's for me, it's like, what if I'm not getting something done or checking something off of a list, I'm like a very accomplished human, and I have always been incentivized to just get more stuff done and do it as best I can, and maybe try to do it better than everybody else, right? But this productivity, this notion that if you're not producing something, you're not getting something done, it's really making it hard for people to understand why they're doing everything and they're not getting different results, right? I mean, this is ever so relevant for fertility. a woman came to me the other day and had like 50 different supplements she's taking. And I'm like, who did this? Who did this to you? And she's like working with some very, very big name companies that I won't bring up. And I'm like, this is becoming the way that functional medicine is practiced. Get a $700 lab panel and then spend $500 a month on all of these different supplements. And it's like, you're going broke. And if somebody told you need to be doing more, where actually maybe we need to pair off all of these and see what your cycles are actually like without 80 micrograms of this and 100 milligrams of this every morning, right? Like maybe we need to actually pair this away, but this also comes on an energetic level and where we put our attention.
Yeah. This concept of you think you need to be doing more, and in reality, chances are you actually need to do less.
Slow the fuck down. Yeah. Go to bed.
Yeah. Go take a walk. Like, go put your bare feet in the grass. Like, go outside. Go be with nature. Maybe take some mushrooms. Like,
get some sunshine. Go take a little microdose and go for a walk.
What is it that, like, where is this bridge? Because I know it exists between a woman's past, her trauma, what she's experienced, what her ancestors have experienced, her voice presently, and the ability to create life, like the ability to have a healthy, happy, pleasurable pregnancy.
Are we talking about a general woman here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this womb that women have is associated with your second chakra, which really is through and through the sort of center of your creative processes, right? It's naturally also associated, the second chakra is with your reproductive organs, because your reproductive organs' purpose is to create babies. It doesn't, like, we're not talking about biology. We're not talking about anything. Like, you have ovaries, a uterus, and fallopian tubes so you can grow babies. Thank God we have women with uteruses, right? And so I'm not getting into gender politics. I'm not going down that path. I'm saying the fact that there are uteruses on our earth is not just necessary for our survival, but it also is a reminder that you have inherently within you the ability to create the most complicated organism the universe has ever known inside of you from nothing. So what does that mean in the greater picture? Well, it means that you as a woman, you have this creative potential. And if it's not exercised, like the old saying goes, if you don't use it, you lose it. And I'm not talking about even making babies. I'm talking about you expressing yourself in ways that feel right. And it may not even feel right. It may just be, here's what's coming out. So the second chakra, interestingly, is also associated with your fifth chakra, which is generally speaking, is your throat chakra. And of course, we use our voice. This is a very unique thing about human beings, to express ourselves. So how many times have I met a couple where a woman doesn't have a voice in her relationship and they're still struggling with fertility? They're doing all the things. They've seen every specialist. They've seen me. They've seen you. They've seen one of my new friends on Instagram. It's what does she call herself? The poop lady or something? She works all on gut. You've seen all the specialists. You've spent tens of thousands of dollars and you still aren't getting pregnant. Well, could it be that you actually haven't exercised your creative potential? Just as a thought exercise. And that is easier said than done for a white, straight man who's reasonably good looking. I just say things and the things magically appear, right? It's the way that our hierarchical system has been designed for my benefit. But for anybody who's born as a woman and raised as a woman, especially, because this is a nature nurture really dilemma. You've been raised to believe that you are not to speak unless spoken to. You are not to go out and pursue those things that make you feel whole. You're certainly not to experience pleasure. And if you do, don't talk about it. So you're just supposed to pipe up, make babies, and get by, right? This has, of course, led to a myriad of issues in sexual assault and sexual abuse. Like, if you haven't been exercising your voice previous to a rape, there's a good chance that you're not going to feel heard if you even do speak up after the rape. So, we could go down that rabbit hole, but the point here is that your ability to create life is an overall expression of the very principles that have created our entire world, which is an allurement and repulsion countertension, right? This is how it works in the subatomic world. This is how it works through the wires in your house. This is how it works in the cosmos, is a polarity. And this polarity has this potential. There's a positive and negative. This potential, this is where the magic happens. Things are drawn together and new emergent properties, come about. This creative process, in the words of Mark Gaffney, from all the way up the evolutionary chain, right? From the smallest to the biggest things we can possibly dream up, is all this creative potential is rooted in this womb space. And how do we treat the womb? We treat the womb as this sort of incubator for babies, and that's it. And when you're done having babies, let's just take it out. Well, there's so many women who I've talked to who don't want to have a hysterectomy because they feel something intuitively wrong about it. And they're finally gaining a voice to say, hey, there's something about this womb space, this womb, this pesky organ that for some reason I'm feeling compelled to keep it. Well, it's important that you have a womb because this is the center of all of your magic. Mm-hmm. And so let me just pause there. What do you think?
I mean, fuck yes. I'm a really, really big fan and supporter of Mama Gina's work. And this has been a big part of what I have brought into my work with women is like helping women reconnect with their wombs, helping them reconnect with the center of fucking creation, helping women like remember how powerful they are. Like we are literally the body that holds and creates through this action potential, living, breathing human beings in our wombs, in our bodies, feeding them life through our own life before they are a living, breathing, crawling, crying human being. And we forget what we're capable of. We forget how powerful we are. We forget what we can create. And we have become, and the patriarchy plays a huge role in this, societal conditioning, beliefs, our education system, our medical system plays a huge role in this, in our disconnection from ourself. And when women become disconnected from self, they lose that creative ability. They lose that power. They lose that intuitive sense until they choose to reconnect with it. Right? Yeah. It's not gone forever. It just requires a redirection inward instead of outward, which is kind of what we were talking a little bit about earlier. And so, yeah, I'm hugely on board with what you're talking about here. And women are the primary nurturers of humanity. Put simply, like we are the first nurturers of humanity, which therefore means that we are, in my opinion, most connected to source. Men are definitely just as connected, but men do not create human beings in their fucking wombs.
Right.
They just don't.
Right.
And so there is this beautiful, like, godlike essence that a woman carries through her womb that has the power to create anything. And I think from what I've seen in my work with women, when I start to bring women back to connect with their wombs, like, look in the mirror, look at your pussy, like, ask her how she's doing. What does she want? What does she need? Like, how can you tend to her? Instead of tuning into our bodies, tuning into our womb space, tuning into our heart space, tuning into our intuitions, we're looking outwardly and asking everyone else around us, what do you think? I'll never forget, as I'm like moving through all this women's work and like really bringing this forward in my life because I believe it's so important. A couple of months ago, I'm in Costa Rica, and I'm someone that likes to like really sit with things and feel into them before I make a decision. And that's how I connect with my intuition. It's not usually this, I try not to have that like really fast impulsive decision making because usually it actually disconnects me from my intuition.
Sure.
Anyways, I'm in the store and I see this hat, and I'd been looking for one of, like the spiritual hats that people wear. And
Are you talking about like a flat brimmed kind of Stetson
yes,
hat? Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. You and every woman on the planet is looking.
I was looking for it, but I was gonna let it find me. You know what I mean? And so I walk into the store and I see this hat and I'm like, oh, I really like this hat. And I'm trying it on. And I was like looking in the mirror, like 45 minutes go by. And I'm like, all right, I think I want this, but like, I'm going to walk away from it. I'm going to feel into it. And if it's meant to be mine, I'm going to come back for it. So I walk out for like 5 minutes. I kid you not. Walk back in after I was like, that's my hat. Like I'm meant to have that. Like I feel it. So I walk back in and there's this other woman in the store with this hat on her head. And I look at the woman and I was like, okay, like I want to buy the hat. And she goes, well, this woman's about to buy it. And I was like, oh shit. Okay. So I just like stood there and she's looking in the mirror and she's like, I don't know, like, what do you think? Like, it's kind of cute. And she's like taking all these photos and sending them to all her friends. And I was just like standing there and I was like, yeah, like, it's a full fuck yes for me. Like, just like, I don't need somebody else's like opinion. And it allowed me to like zoom out and have this experience to see like the difference between a woman who is still wounded in these areas and a woman who is so deeply connected to her intuition, deeply connected to, her knowing, her body, right? Because a woman who still carries these wounds oftentimes wants to know what everybody else thinks about her, what everybody else thinks about it, and uses somebody else's opinion to make her decision. Versus a woman who is so deeply connected to her power, to her womb space, to her intuition, she knows. She can ask others like, oh, what do you think? But that response from others does not influence her decision because she's so connected to that knowing within her that like she knows what she needs, she knows how to listen to herself, and she knows how to follow through at that. And I refer to this as being an unshakable woman, as somebody that is so deeply connected to herself, who knows exactly who she is, what she needs, her yeses and her nos based off of her body, based off of her pussy, and she's able to root so deeply in the ground and be so connected to Mother Earth and to nature that no matter what comes through, the wind, the hail, the snow, the rain, it can blow her over, but it's never going to uproot her from the ground because she is so unshakable in her own essence and in who she is. And I believe that when we can bring women back to that unshakable essence within herself, still knowing that she does need other people sometimes and knowing when she needs other people and when to ask for help from others, that she can create, that she can do what it is that she wants in her life and bring more pleasure because she is in her power.
Well, this, I think is, so I'm not like some sort of tantric master or anything, but what you're saying is actually so relevant to, let's pick on the Instagram a moment. Everybody's like, you got to advocate, you got to fight for your rights and this and that. Well, listen, if everything you said is true, and now a woman is in the throes of labor and one foot's in the astral, she's out in outer space for dissolving, her old identity is dying, she's being reborn. In the middle of that, you want her to advocate for herself? I mean, you want her to get into her brain and think about the data and do some some mathematics and then come up with like, the answer to what she really most deeply wants, right? That may happen. That's certainly possible. But the problem is, or the dilemma is, that if a woman hasn't exercised that practice of really tuning into her intuition, which I consider authoritative knowledge in childbirth, then she's going to, end up being faced by an authority figure that looks like me with a white coat on, and you're going to be pressed with, sometimes coercive language, and you're expected to advocate for yourself. Like, are you fucking kidding me? This is a woman who is afraid of walking to her car or leaving the bar, because she's afraid for her life every moment, that she's out there. After 2 a.m. in Pittsburgh, where I grew up, like it was a fucking hellscape outside of the bars, And so this young woman has lived her life knowing that she needs to carry mace, she needs to carry keys in her hand. The world is potentially threatening because of the way that many men unfortunately treat women. She's been gaslit for her entire life by her gynecologist. nobody's been inquisitive enough to ask her about, her story and her values and preferences. They don't really care what your religious or spiritual beliefs are. And you then present to the hospital and you're expected to advocate for yourself. Like, guys, there's no fucking way. And
it's like, if you already haven't healed these deep-seated wounds within yourself, you're absolutely not out of nowhere going to be able to like step into that power when you're already under-resourced, when you're already experiencing so much pain. Like, it doesn't just like, you don't just become the Hulk and all of a sudden be able to just like have it. Like, it doesn't work like that.
That's right.
So how do you see this? It's so super critical, and it plays such a huge role in the end of the experience, which we're talking about being childbirth and creation of human life. Because again, your body remembers everything. Like, your body keeps the score on everything. And that which you don't feel, you don't heal. And that which you don't heal creates the impact of your life moving forwards, of your organs, of your body, of everything that you can create moving forwards, internally and externally. So like, my question for you is, how do we change this? How do we create this change? Because this goes deep. And like, what in your eyes can be done in a more widespread manner to create this change in women and also in men? Because the masculine and the feminine find harmony together.
Yeah, I think so. A couple of things come to mind. The first is, you brought up Mama Gina, who she's lived a hell of a life, and she's gone through quite a bit of rupture and has then been compelled to reconcile. She, in her book Pussy, there's that word, highly recommended. I reread it after you and I had our chat because I knew it was going to be relevant, and it was nice to read it with new eyes. It's been maybe a decade since I read it. I don't know when it was published, but it was a long time ago that I read that book. Well, she describes that women relate to one another through negativity, right? Like, so the first thing is, women need to be supporting women. I think that's first and foremost. And we actually have to share our deepest, darkest doubts about ourselves. I'm not ourselves. Women need to be, they need to have a circle of other women who are open to sharing the good and the bad, and sharing joy with one another, but also, sharing some of our greatest quandaries,
Brags, we call them.
Brags.
We call them, like, me and my roommate do that. It's like, today I brag that like I have a new client. Today I brag that like I have a beautiful bleed. Today I brag that I tended to the garden. Right? It's like, we're afraid to brag.
Yeah. That's beautiful, and that to me is like a work for feminism. Is like, feminism has nothing to do with your ability to vote. I'm sorry. I think at the time it probably was really important, but even then, it's not like women really achieved like an equal footing or something, right? There's this notion, of course, this is perpetuated by the Disney princesses from the old Disney movies, like not Frozen and Moana, where we have these badass bitches that are just like conquering the world. I mean, like, Sleeping Beauty goes into a coma and has to have some man who's completely inept, but he like looks good on a horse, and he rides up and gives her a kiss, and now she can live her life. Like, that is the allegory for how women have shown up. So there's another part of this, which is that, how do men support women, right? Calling yourself a feminist doesn't matter if you don't give a person the opportunity to speak when they're trying to express themselves. So for the men out there, a way of actually encouraging this connection between women is, when a woman is talking, shut the fuck up. It's simple as that. You don't need to like have an HR meeting at your workplace. If a woman is talking at the table, shut the fuck up. Or if they were interrupted, say, "Hey, I'm sorry, she was speaking. Go ahead, miss." Like, Leah, continue.
It's like the mansplaining. Like, don't fucking mansplain me. Like, listen to me. If a woman is speaking her emotions, like, receive her in that. Like, more than anything, all a woman fucking wants is to be received.
Yeah. Yeah. And that reception can be more than just letting them speak. Like you actually have to actually be listening, and listening is a really, really hard thing for me because, you know, when I was in the hospital system, listening meant, okay, get the information to make the diagnosis and then give the treatment, right? Or let's move on to the next step. You're going through these motions of putting them in stirrups and everything else, right? So most of the men that I grew up with were not good listeners. They never listened to me, and I just was never practiced in that. And then my wife, Stephanie, she demands it. Like she will rage out on me if I'm doing other stuff while she's not, you know, while she's trying to share something that happened with the girls or just about how good her day was or whatever else. So, so being present and being a good listener is I think through and through a healthy thing for your relationship. But it goes beyond just letting women talk. You don't need our permission to talk anyways, gals. But I'll just say it because I think it needs to be said. We'll get to how does a woman actually find her voice, because I actually have been doing some chanting practices with my wife that have been critical for that. But the other element here is that if you want to practice being present, again, I'll go back to John Wineland's work. He wrote a book called From the Core. It's incredible. He really walks you through some tantric practices that when you think tantric, don't think like tantric sex. Think deeply connecting in non-physical ways. And one thing that I've done with my partner is, without her even knowing, is I can tell that she's a little bit upset and her chest is going up and down, and I will start breathing at the same rate as her. And then as I start, and she notices something changing in how we're connecting, I'm squared up with her, I'm there, I'm looking at her, and she might be busy making dinner. But as soon as she realizes that I'm on pace with her, we can slow it down together, and then we are connected. And it's a mirroring. It really is. So that sex that all those men want to have with your big boners, that is a consequence of deep connection. That is not the start of intimacy. That is the end product of intimacy that might take days or weeks to get to. You are not entitled to have sex with this person. You have to allow them to open themselves up to you. And they'll only do that if you're willing to receive them. So by allowing them to receive you, meaning you are expressing yourself fully, they are going to feel like you are a receptacle for them. And that's where that polarity piece, that's where the creative expression comes into play. You can practice that with yourself by expressing on paper, singing, dancing, painting, or whatever. But if you don't have anybody to receive it, then there's no intimacy. Intimacy is the polarities drawing one another so close that bam, some explosion happens and a new emergent property, kind of takes over.
Yeah,
that's intimacy. What sex is. Yeah, that's into me I see.
Yes, yes, exactly it.
Yeah.
And I think that these are beautiful, like this concept of mirroring that you're talking about. And you were even discussing this from what I was hearing in this concept of being seen and heard, right? Like not just listening, but like showing the person that's on the other side of you that you're being receptive, that you see them, that you hear them. And for those of you that are like, oh, how do I do this? If you're new to this, something that I would highly recommend is reflect when someone speaks to you. Before you respond, reflect back to them what you heard this person say. What I'm hearing is, right? And reflect back exactly what they just communicated to you. And that's a beautiful way to allow the person in front of you to like really feel into, wow, this person really heard me. They saw me in what I just felt or what I just communicated. And you're doing that non-verbally with your wife through this breathing, right? As you're meeting her in that same place, right? And you're showing her that this is what you're seeing when you start to breathe faster. And then she gets to be like, oh, wow, he's seeing me. He's noticing that I'm breathing heavy or faster. I'm maybe a little dissociated somewhere out here instead of here. And then that gives you the opportunity to now meet on the same plane, to meet in the same place, to find that connection, right? Because you, in that connection, intimacy, you have to meet each other in a place to get to somewhere together where you are not yet. And if you cannot find that meeting place, that center, and like find that intertwining together, on the same level, on the same frequency, where there is this mirroring happening, you can't work together towards a similar goal.
Right. 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 I mean, that's beautiful. As soon as I read John's book, I was like, holy shit, I didn't realize that I was like open to this type of conversation. Like, I didn't realize I needed to work on this so much. But most men think they're doing okay. And it's because they haven't really had an honest conversation with their partner. And their partner hasn't really felt like they have the room to express just maybe how unhappy they are or how unheard they are. And, you know, my wife and I have been married well, we met when we were 15. And I'm almost 40. So we've been together for like 23 years.
Wow.
And we had some time apart in med school, but we don't really count that. We were still desperately in love with one another, but thought we weren't right for each other. And then we got back together, now have 2 children, and the rest is history. But we've been working on this for all that time. Like, this is the path of Tantra is actually working towards that part where sex is fulfilled by love. Love is not fulfilled by sex. You know, so sex is a consequence, in other words, of our deep love for one another. And nowadays, that's very, very hard when you have kids and everything else. I get all of that, but that's not really what I'm saying here. What I'm saying here is that you don't, you know, you get married, and that's where like the work actually begins. You don't just give up and start and just fall into these patterns thinking you're doing everything right, because you're both changing every single day when you wake up. So before we wrap up, let me also talk about this chanting practice, which again was one of those things where it's like, oh, you're going to chant every day? Give me a break, bro. No, this has changed so much for me. My wife went down to Costa Rica on a whim. She found this program online and was like, can I go? And I said, yeah, I will take care of the, right? Not that she had to ask permission, but we communicate. She's like, how do you feel about me going? Are you going to be good with the girls? And I was like, yeah, of course. And it was a nightmare of a time for me because I'm still figuring it out. But I had some family come and stay with me. And she went down to Costa Rica. And interestingly, this was a vocal transformation, a voice activation retreat where they were going to do some ayahuasca and whatnot. But the primary thing here was for you to start to tapping into your own voice. The day she arrived, she developed laryngitis. So if that's not, you know, a sign from the universe that something here is, you know, important for you, I don't know what is. But when she came back after this, she was so lit up that she was like, I want to do this program with you. I think that you would like it. So we started, the program is found at vocaltransformation.com if anybody's curious. I have no affiliation. The owner and the creator of this program has become a friend of ours, but I give zero fucks. It's just an amazing program. I like talking about amazing things. So the way it works is you start chanting at the first chakra, and you do all this journaling and all these exercises working up to a 40-day commitment to chanting Laum, first chakra, which is your sort of the root of all of your insecurities. And man, did we have some nasty fights. Like every little bit of stuff that we hadn't I don't know, worked through, it became like front and center. There was all this immune stuff happening, like a bad congestion that I got. I mean, it was just like gnarly. I was like, Maren, what are you doing to me here? And she was like, that's a part of the process. It's good that you're doing it. It's a 28-minute commitment every single day where you are chanting loud to a soundtrack over and over and over 108 times. Just so happens to be the number of beads on a proper mala. And then when you're done with that, you do some more exercises and you start the second chakra. We're finishing the second chakra now. And since we were talking about that, this is the center of not just our creative expression and reproductive health, but this is also the seat of our sensuality. This is the seat, and sensuality refers to the senses. How do we relate to the world and one another? How does this partner smell to me? How do they look? How do they feel? How do they taste? All of those things are a part of intimacy without even getting to the penetrative intercourse that we all see on Pornhub. So the point here, the reason I'm trying to say this is that through this chanting, I think that my wife has also, her voice has started to emerge and become more clear. And for me, having gone through this thing I described at the very beginning of the episode, I would be hard pressed to find some other technology, so to speak, that drew my emotional, that empowered me to be that expressive with my emotions as a contemporary man who's only had men modeling stoic, keep your emotions in, don't ever show your sadness. I was weeping all day long because of what we had talked about. And I actually think it's an attribute of the chanting practice. Now, I haven't always had a hard time crying. Like, I'm not like most men, but it was uncontrollable, Leah. It was like every couple minutes, water would start coming out again. It was just unbelievably unbridled grieving. And that is exactly what we've been talking about. I think women are grieving femininity. I think that they're grieving the loss of their youth. I feel like they're grieving the loss of their maidenhood when they go through this transition to motherhood. I think they're grieving the loss of their sexy selves because society doesn't value you as you get older. Like, I think people are grieving so many things in our society. And if you're not going to be able to express that grief in a healthy way, whether it's a bad prenatal diagnosis or it's something happening, a rupture in your family or in your relationship, it's not going to ever get better. You have to actually sit with this and you have to work through it. And this chanting practice is a really, really good thing for those out there that really want to, like, this is a tool, here are the instructions, do the work, and it will change your life. I can't recommend it enough. It is really, really something special.
You have talked nonstop about this experience, and yeah, like coming back to this being one of the major wounds of women is like not using their voice, not being afraid to use their voice. And the thing is, like, your voice, your sounds, not your words, your sounds are your primary communication network of your body. Frequencies, it is energy, and it is what connects you to that innate language of your being. And so I'll put this, you said vocaltransformation.com. I'll put this link in the show notes for anyone that wants to explore this. I'm super interested in exploring this myself. Yeah, I know that for me personally, like, I love exploring ohms and sounds in meditation as well as with plant medicines to connect deeper. So I love this for any woman who's interested in, or any man that's interested in going deeper into your voice and into this expression of self. This could be a great option for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this. I feel like you and I could like talk on this topic all day long. And turn into myself and just feel into what's needed as we close up this conversation today. For the woman who is feeling so disconnected from herself, for the woman who is feeling so disconnected from her womb, for the woman who is feeling so disconnected from that which she has not mourned, what do you want to invite her into?
One of the themes that I think is most appropriate in my counseling, within the Born Free method, within my other communities, on my own podcast, is this notion of surrender. There's a lot that's in your control. There's a lot that isn't in your control. When we have orgasms, we don't like consciously say, okay, let's orgasm now. We actually have to let go in order for it to kind of do its thing. In other words, it's not an analytical process. Likewise, with a deep mushroom dive, I had one experience. I've done a lot of psychedelics in my life. And I had one experience that was like 20 hours being glued to the floor. We added Syrian rue and it just potentiated it to give you a comparison, a friend of mine, he was with me in this ceremony and he had done 30 grams at one time. And he said that this was infinitely harder. So whatever 30 grams feels like, I'll never know. I'm never going to do that. But this one was extremely hard. 20 hours of just glued to the floor. It was gnarly. And what comes up for me, and anybody out there who's taken a medicine journey in this way, what came up for me there was that I was resisting it until I stopped resisting. And then it was a flood of stuff, for me, not happening to me, but for me, if I was willing to receive it. So this notion of surrender, in the ultimate psychedelic journey, rite of passage, of course, is childbirth. The surrendering to the various unknowns is actually an important part of the journey. It's an important part of every aspect of our life, but especially rites of passage. And fortunately, we have two of those in our life. We have birth and we have our death at the end of this linear timeline. And when I've sat with a lot of death, we're able to surrender to this reality as opposed to being afraid and running in fear of their own mortality. Things, for lack of better terms, go a lot more smoothly, let's just say. And it's no different for childbirth. So surrendering is a part of even inviting the spirit of your baby into your womb in the first place. Surrendering is required for you to realize that there's no hacking your way through this. You're not in a jungle with a machete. You actually have to be open to receive this gift. It's not an entitlement. And when we treat it like something that's super controllable, we're treating it like something that is ours for the taking, and it's not. This is actually something that you have to surrender to, which is why it's no surprise when couples have such a hard time with fertility. They'll go to the fertility specialist, and the next month they get pregnant spontaneously. It happens all the time. There's some element of just giving this burden over to somebody else. And so my advice for anybody looking to improve the juiciness in their bed, in the bedroom, all the way down to receiving the blessing of the spirit of a baby in your center of life force energy, your second chakra, your womb space. Surrender is a big part of that. And I don't think anybody actually says, I'm so proud of you first, because it makes you sound weak or soft. But that is a very confident, strong person who can just surrender and let the river carry them. So that would be my advice.
I love that. And
this goes for men too.
For everyone, like that concept of surrender is so important, to let go of the control, which we all try to grab onto as to fix or to do, right? One of what we were talking about earlier. And so I love that. And yeah, just relating very deeply with that as I move through my own journey right now with some like really deep feminine wounds that aren't necessarily mine, but I carry. And I carry because there was no responsibility taken for them in past lives and in generations past. And I have the awareness, and therefore I have the responsibility, right? I get to be accountable for taking not control, but owning it and surrendering to it as to feel, right? And had my own little my own little medicine journey with that this weekend, right? Of that moment where you're just like holding on so tight and like don't want to let go of the control, and then the moment that you surrender to it and you release and you let go, your body actually just falls into spirit, into oneness, into that space of all knowing, right? Release that feeling of being fully received and softening. So thank you for that reflection. And so my last question before I let you dive into where people can find you, I always ask this question to everybody on the show, is, and this could be similar to what we've talked about, maybe something else comes up. If there's one thing that you could remind the listener to inspire them into a more mindful approach to human evolution, what would that be?
We're going to get nowhere if we can't we're going to get nowhere if we can't reimagine just how sacred childbirth is, and the pure magic that is the sort of feminine mystique, the power of femininity, this procreative process. It's not just a thing that we can lean on when we need more children. This is really, really so important for us to appreciate just how sacred this is. So power to the pussy.
Pussy power. Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. And seeing this journey that a woman gets to go through as this sacred initiation, as you had mentioned before. And it really is this, like what you referred to it as, the like the mother of passageways. What was the term that you used earlier?
Oh, I have no idea. You have to relate me. The mother of passageways.
So like that highest, deepest initiation for women, really.
Yeah. 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 I don't remember.
That's okay. Well, thank you so much, Nathan, for being here. I've really loved this conversation. I just feel like it like the values of what you're embodying in your work, just I feel are so aligned with my message and what I'm here to like ignite in women. And just really grateful for the work that you're doing, helping women reconnect to their sovereignty, reconnect to their voice, reconnect to their body, and like come home to themselves, what they need, and how to speak that into the world, to their partners, to their healthcare practitioners, right? How to vouch for themselves. So thank you for the work that you're doing. It's so incredibly important, and I love getting to witness you and all the things that you're creating, and just like the way that you are just so fucking authentically you. And I love that so much. I
Well,
relate
thank you.
very deeply because that is, in my opinion, like one of the deepest medicines to lead as an example for others to come home to themselves,
Yeah.
to their voice, to their fully expressed way of being. So thank you for that. It does not go unseen. I see you and I'm grateful for you. And if anyone else who's listening would love to dive deeper into your work, would like to follow you, I know that you have a program coming out, the Born Free Method. Would you like to share a little bit with us about the program and where they can find you?
Yeah, well, the Born Free Method is the best fucking pregnancy support program on the planet. It's just as simple as that. We're bringing midwifery and obstetrics together into a very, very comprehensive video library of literally everything under the sun. It's all really based on this premise of sovereignty that we keep mentioning. So if I could add a second point, billboard for your listeners, it would be that you have to remember just how powerful you are when you make decisions that feel intuitively right to you. There's very, very little I can say to somebody who I know, they know themselves so well. They have gone through this thought exercise and they say, no, thank you. Ooh, that is like the most powerful woman on the planet. So I'm no longer the power. This dynamic shifts very, very quickly when a person knows who they are. They know what they know. They've received the recommendations and they're ready to make decisions for themselves. That is something that has to be practiced. You need the data, you need the insights of other people, you need personal recommendations, but ultimately you're the one who's going to make the decisions. And if you want to be really free, true sovereignty requires that you also own the outcome of those decisions. So this is a program that is really kind of wherein that notion is pivotal. So you're not just getting checklists and, what's the data say about rupture of the uterus after a C-section? You're not just getting that. You're also getting empowerment through a private community, through we do group calls every other week. There's a growing video library on every complication under the sun, how to prevent those things through lifestyle modification. And then, of course, you get my cell phone and phone number for the rest of your reproductive life to call or ask anything when you're in the program. So there's also some valuable contributions there for the dads. I have a 12-month dads men's group, basically men's group focused on the fathers and soon-to-be fathers that is starting actually this Saturday at the time of our recording. It's the weekend of Father's Day 2024. And we're going to go for 12 months together and bringing in big guest speakers. And we're just going to really connect as men around this new challenge to our masculinity and our opportunity to flex our masculinity as fathers. So there's a whole bunch of things that are just unique to this program. People can go to bornfreemethod.com if they want to check that out. And by the time that this episode goes live, I suspect we will have a very free offering to anybody in the community who is or friends of people in your community who have gone through pregnancy loss or some of these hard decisions like what we were talking about. It's a completely free mini program that takes little bits of the Born Free Method and we put it together into a free package for anybody out there that needs this support. I just think it's too valuable and too needed right now in a world that is there, where there's this paucity of truly holistic, person-centered care and support when these really, really hard things arise through this rite of passage. So that's also available. We'll have a unique link I can give you there, but that will be available through Born Free Method as well.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us. And yeah, like I said, thank you for opting into this work and for sharing this work, not just with women,
My pleasure.
but
Thank
also
you.
with the men, so that they can hold that space and be expressive and like meet in that center point with the feminine, with women, to support them and continue creating greater impact.
Yeah.
So that being said, Nathan, where can they find you on Instagram? I will connect your links as well.
Yeah, Nathan Riley, OBGYN.
Perfect.
Got really creative with that one. And then my website is Beloved Holistics, but they can find my podcast and everything else through Instagram, I'm sure.
I love
where
it.
I'm most active.
Amazing. Well, I will put all of those links in the show notes. Nathan, thank you again for being here. As I mentioned, I love your energy. I love what you bring to the world. I definitely don't feel this will be the last time we do some sort of collaboration together. And thank you so much for just sharing your truth, for sharing what's alive in you today. I'm sending you so much love and holding you in my heart as you move through some of the mourning and some of the pain that's happening in your world right now. And thank you for continuing to show up and lead as an example of what's possible.
Thank you so much, Leah. Thank you. Thank you. And the feelings are completely mutual.
I appreciate you.
Likewise.
And I appreciate you for listening. Thank you for being here. If you have any questions or comments, drop them in our inboxes. Find us on social media. Connect with us. Like we are bringing so much emphasis here to community. So come find me on social media. Let me know what you thought of this episode. Go check out Nathan Riley, OBGYN on Instagram. Shoot him a follow and let him know, like, what were some of your big takeaways from the episode today? What did this inspire in you? How has this ignited your voice or your power? We love to receive those reflections. So thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in. And until next time, I hope you have the most beautiful rest of your day. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in with me today and for continuing to opt in to your inner work. If you found value in this conversation, please share it on social media or with someone you know that values both healing and growth. And I'd also like to invite you to join the Holistic Healing Tribe. This is my private community full of self-healers who are on a mission to optimize their physical, mental, and emotional well-being. Click the link in the show notes to join the tribe. And when you join, I'll send you my favorite things that have made the biggest impact on my health, my healing, and my growth. And finally, if you're anything like me and deeply care about seeing a more mindful approach to human evolution, please leave a review to help us reach more listeners and make a bigger impact on the world around you.